Hi, my name's Frank Schaefer, and I cut my teeth in politics 35, 40 years ago as a sidekick to a right-wing evangelist, Francis Schaeffer. And I traveled away from that to progressive politics, inclusive politics, loving politics, and a very different mystical and paradoxical approach to religion. But that's a different story. Today I want to say something else, and that is, I guess, as a 64-year-old grandfather of 5, father of 3, grown children, someone who has been all over the political spectrum, knew Gerald Ford, President Ford, had his son staying with us in our home, have personal notes from the Bush family, Reagan, who wrote a note after my dad died. Having really seen all sides of this, I want to bring a perspective to the confrontation between Hillary Clinton and our democracy and the fascist thug Donald Trump. And I've spoken about him before, but today I want to say something different. And I'm so sorry for my friends this is going to offend. But from my perspective, Jill Stein and Gary Johnson are acting as facilitators of fascism. Look, this is no ordinary election. This isn't a year where a token candidate like Jill Stein can bring her highfalutin ideals of the Green Party or Gary Johnson, his libertarian ideals, to the debate in a way that might shape two normal candidates and raise issues. This is way past raising issues. Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, should Hillary Clinton lose, and I don't think she will, because I think there's enough sensible Americans still left to steer our country away from the fascist thug Vladimir Putin. Yes, I didn't misspeak, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, who are really this election's candidates in America, to sanity. But that said, Jill Stein and Gary Johnson are either egomaniacs or fools. Yes, one or the other. Egomaniacs because they believe they have a mission to save the world that overrides our own democracy, or fools because they don't really understand the stakes we are facing. This is not an ordinary election. This is not an election between an ordinary Republican, say a George Bush Sr., or even a Ronald Reagan, and an ordinary Democrat. This is an election between an ordinary Democrat, Hillary Clinton, qualified beyond measure with the temperament to be president, and, as I said before, a literal fascist thug who cut his teeth in the early days of his own career with his father, keeping blacks out of the housing that they controlled, who has lied consistently, ripped off students in his so-called university, gone bankrupt so he doesn't have to pay workers, mishandled his own so-called charity funds to pay his own legal debts with, as was made clear in a long piece in the Washington Post the other day. This man is not just a fraud, but he's a thug. So Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, I have a question for you. When Trump pardons every white policeman who shoots down a black man just for the hell of it, as is happening all over our country, when his thugs invade our polling places to intimidate voters this year, when he uses the weight of the federal government to sue his former opponents and critics, when he has people beaten up in alleys following his leader, yes, his leader, Vladimir Putin, whose fascistic example he loves, where will you be then? And to voters out there, we have to get our head out of the sand. We not only have to turn out in droves for Hillary Clinton to send a message to the world and to our country and to the future that we will be an inclusive people who care about justice and fairness, but those who are considering voting as a protest vote for two candidates you know will not possibly win, this is no year for protest votes. The chips are down. This is a year between fascism and American democracy. I happen to think Hillary Clinton will make a great president. But even if I'm wrong, she will at least make, and I know this is crazy sounding, a normal president. A president who respects our democratic institutions. Just imagine the Supreme Court loaded with Trump appointees, these religious right nuts that he will put on there as payback to the homophobic, hate-filled conservatives who support him, the white supremacists who support him. You don't want to be in that country, Jill Stein fans. You don't want to be in that country, Gary Johnson protest voters. Take a very deep breath and think about where we are going. And Jill Stein and Gary Johnson, if there's any humility left in you, take a look at this election, take a look at the poll numbers, call a press conference, give your votes to Hillary Clinton, and work your asses off to get her elected to save us. Not from a wrong-headed Republican whose greatest sin is trickle-down economics or some sort of Southern strategy, but from an outright fascist, bigot, Vladimir Putin. There will be blood on your hands if you are the difference that gets America under the thumb of a fascist. Thank you. My name's Frank Schaefer.